All right, guys, you're here with Josh Thomson. I'm going to give you guys a quick breakdown on a couple things today. So let's talk about Jon Jones. Let's talk about Jon Jones and USADA giving him 15-month suspension. He accepted the suspension. He'll be back. I believe it's like October. And I guess let's just get into it. You know, I've had numerous conversations with some other promotions and their high execs and all their executives and other people, and not just Bellator, but also some other shows as well. And they talk about a lot of things that I've always thought about when you're dealing with USADA. And Khabib brought up a good point when being interviewed by TMZ, I believe it was today, before the press conference. His friends, and I'm not just saying his friends, but other people have gotten year-long, 2-year-long suspensions for first-time offenses. And then you have somebody like Jon Jones that is only getting a 15-month suspension. Now, I've said this I don't know how many times, but the number one issue and the number one problem with having somebody like USADA involved is that they're getting paid by the UFC. And you're basically dealing with the boss is paying your check and telling you also too, like, hey, this guy's too important to the company. We can't afford to lose him for too long. DC's about to retire. Conor, he's going to come and go as he pleases. There's a lot of conversation and talk. I mean, even though past interviews have been talked about, Khabib may be done after this fight, especially if he wins. And they will have basically like no superstars. Sure, they'll elevate somebody up to be a superstar. They can do it. I mean, I've said this I don't know how many times. Promotions can put somebody in place and make them a superstar. Put the backing behind them. You just got to they got to find the right talent to do it. Conor was obviously the right talent. They picked some of his opponents and he did really well. I mean, he came out and always did what he was supposed to do. But I mean, when he got to the top echelon of guys, he had to beat those guys, and he beat them convincingly. Eddie Alvarez, Jose Aldo, Max wasn't the guy that he is, now that he's the champion, but it was still like he was obviously a very talented kid at the time that they fought. Those things being said, this has always been the conversation piece and the problem with when you have the boss paying somebody or a company to do the drug testing. And it's just funny how, and I'm not just not knocking the UFC, but I'm saying it's just funny how their superstars don't seem to get busted till after the fight. And when they do get busted after they've already sold the pay-per-views and after they've already had the fight, then the suspension comes back, and look at how long the suspension is. You guys, as my number one complaint about this whole issue is that we're not talking about hitting home runs and balls over the fence. We're not talking about swinging a golf club or a tennis racket, okay, or playing football. We're talking about dudes can get really hurt in this sport, and these guys are failing drug tests. These guys are failing, PED test. They're testing positive for PEDs, and they're only getting 15-month suspension. You're inviting this guy. You're setting a precedent right now that it's okay to go ahead and give this guy only a 15-month suspension for something that potentially could lead to like hurting other people. I'm not just talking about Jon Jones. I'm talking about all these other guys. Brock Lesnar, you let him fight. Jon Jones had tested positive before. Sure it was for cocaine, but people don't seem to understand when you're testing positive for something, right? Whether it's cocaine, marijuana, whatever, that can also be used as like a masking agent. Sure, I got tested. I was on steroids, whatever it was, but yeah, I tested positive for, for marijuana or for cocaine or dick pills or, whatever it was. That's the problem. That's the issue that I think that as a fighter you have a problem. I have an issue with is that you're condoning the fact that these guys are getting tested hot, and the boss is setting a standard that these guys are allowed to go ahead and fight within a short period of time. And Khabib, like Khabib said, my friends tested positive their first time, and in all Russian, like in the Russian like kind of defense, like Maria Sharapova, she got tested hot. Some of the UFC guys got tested hot. But a lot of the Russian guys tested positive for that thing called meladonium. I think it was called meladonium, which they basically were saying like, hey, that we get that like over the counter, like, yeah, you guys get aspirin, So, and I've heard it was like basically like a vitamin to them, but there was something in meladonium or whatever that was kind of increase your oxygen intake and also help you build muscle. And just, it was more of like something that people took for a better heart and better, better blood supply, whatever, for your heart, things like that. So they didn't realize that USADA and commissions had put it on the anti-doping thing. So when they all tested hot. So I understand, like, we had that issue with them in the Olympics. We had the issue with them with Russians in the Olympics. Also Russian, like Maria Sharapova, testing hot. They served their time. But they got year-long and 2-year-long things that they had been using for the longest time that they had just been buying, considered to be over-the-counter, like type vitamins or whatever you want to call it. The same thing happened with Yoel Romero. He was still given a suspension based on that all of his supplements had tested hot. So I gotta tip my hat to him. Like, sure, maybe he's the token person that if you were to point fingers and say, hey, that guy right there is somebody who looks like he's hot, looks like he's been using steroids, but he's never been tested. He's never been found guilty of ever. He's never been found. And USADA's, I'm sure, testing him all the time. If you look like that at 40-something years old or 41 years old, but he's always looked like that, and Olympic testing is one of the toughest things to pass. And sure, maybe he has. I can't even say if he has or not, but until he's tested positive, I'm not going to ever say he is. I'm not going to say that he ever has, but with Jon Jones, we know that he has, and all of his supplements were tested, and none of them were tested hot. Now, why are we having this conversation? I'm having this conversation because you're talking about guys with families at home, kids. You're talking about guys that are trying to support their families, and they're fighting guys that are on steroids. Mark Hunt is extremely pissed at the fact, and I'm suing the UFC for these type of things. Like, the UFC most likely knew. Majority of people go, like, their probation officers. They go to their probation officers, they pee in a cup, like 20 minutes later, they know whether they've smoked weed, done cocaine, done meth, like done certain drugs. I can't imagine it would take 3 to 4 weeks to know whether Brock Lesnar was hot at the time, had tested positive for PEDs, and I'm a Brock fan. I enjoy watching him compete, but I also enjoy watching him compete at a clean level. I would like to see him test clean all the time. We're talking about these families that are at home. They've got kids at home. They've got all these. They've got a life to live after fighting. And when USADA is being paid by the boss to allow somebody like Jon Jones to keep slipping through the cracks 15 months when other people are getting 1 and 2 year long suspensions for something that they've been taking their whole life, not realizing it was on the banned substance list, then this is when you need to have a standard of, like, look, if you test hot one time and there's no stipulation of, like, when you're gonna, like, what it is, it should say, if you test hot the first time, you get a year long or 2 year long. You got to have a standard for everyone. You can't just make it up as you go. Like, oh, well, we felt like his intent was not to do any harm or that he purposely took it. That doesn't make any damn sense. What you felt was it affected the UFC's pocketbook, and that's the pocketbook that pays you, and that's why his suspension's only 15 months. That is the type of shit that's going to ruin this sport. Like Khabib said, and like other people have said, that's probably one of the quickest ways to make this sport fall. I think the promotion, all promotions were on an all-time high. I consider it like the golden era of when Strikeforce was in business, when Pride and Dream were in business, when the UFC was doing well, like everyone was on its rise. That to me was like the golden time, I think, for it all. Strikeforce created, women's MMA pretty much. It took it to the next level with Gina Carano, who's obviously an ultimate star in doing movies and things like that. But And we had drug testing back then, and even the commissions. People talk about the commissions, but the commissions also too now are doing surprise drug tests like 3 to 4 weeks out. So then you know that if you're testing someone 3 to 4 weeks out, that they can't. I mean, they're potentially not cycling off and on, or they're sure they can still get around it, but at least there's an opportunity to be caught in the middle of all of it. But when you have a promotion that is paying a company to come in, test their athletes, and also playing judge, jury, verdict, everything like that, then that's when you have the issue of things like this happening, where people just don't seem to understand that you can't hire somebody and then turn around and grease the palms of them so then your star athletes can get by. It shouldn't work that way. And not only should it not work that way, we're talking about the lives of top athletes that potentially their career could be ended. I'm going to give you an example, and I'm only saying this because it only takes one concussion to end your career. It only takes one hard knock to end your career, and that's TJ Grant. Supposed to fight for the lightweight title against Anthony Pettis. He got a concussion. He got a concussion during training. I believe it was during grappling. We never heard from that guy again. What does that tell you? That means that these guys that are out there that are using steroids potentially could go out there, knock somebody out with that little extra power, that little extra training that they got, and potentially end their career. And this company is UFC is paying for USADA to come and do the drug testing and then turn around and letting these guys come back. They're handpicking who they want to have in the show. And I mean, whether it's, do I enjoy watching Jon Jones fight? Hell yeah. Who doesn't enjoy watching him fight? Do I think he's potentially one of the greatest talents ever in combat sports? Hell yeah, I think he is. But do I think it's fair to have him only get a 15-month suspension when other guys, like the guys like Nick Diaz, have served a 3-year or 2-year-long suspension for marijuana? Fuck no, it's not. It's definitely not fair. So all those things being said, I think we need to take a look and take a step back at just how this could affect our sport. And I think people need to chime in. They need to chime into the UFC and be like, hey, and even if it was Bellator, I'd be saying the same thing, guys. Like, I've had these conversations with them. Like, it just doesn't seem like when I've had these conversations with Bellator, they've said, like, you can't have both. You can't pay a company to come in and do the drug testing without people thinking that you're the one paying them, without them thinking that something is going on behind closed doors. You hand select whose drug tests get revealed, whose drug tests fail, and who doesn't. I mean, like, you're the boss. You could do that. If you're the one paying these guys, there's obviously some say going on. Brock Lesnar was able to fight Mark Hunt. Jon Jones tested hot for cocaine a month before he fought DC. If anything, let's just say this: if anything, even if it's not PEDs, and somebody a month before tests positive for cocaine, you should be, as a promotion, looking out for that athlete and saying, like, why are you, of all people, why are you, of all people, doing cocaine a month before you fight to regain your title, to put your title on the line? Like, the promotion should step in and say, hey, either we got to get this guy some help. He's our star athlete. I mean, basically, he's second after Conor. He's the star, huge star. You guys should be thinking, like, how, as a promotion, you should be thinking, like, how can I save my athletes? How can I build my athletes up to make sure the longevity of their career is long? Sure, I'm not asking you guys to be their babysitters, but you shouldn't be letting guys fight who test positive for cocaine a month before. Shouldn't be letting guys fight that tested hot for steroids a couple weeks before they're fighting. It's so funny how they're all getting released a week or two after, like, oh, so-and-so tested hot. You didn't know that beforehand. How many times did you drug test them before? So that's my rant. That's my punk's opinion. That's my 2 cents on the whole deal. I would like to see drug testing across the board in every promotion. I would like to see it independently done. The only issue with that is You have promotions that obviously, and it goes for any promotion, whether it be Risen, whether it be one championship, fighting championships, whether it be Bellator, whether it be the UFC. You have the promoters would have any promoter should have an issue with the fact that like your athlete could test hot, and if your athlete tests hot and you put millions of dollars into promoting that athlete, you've just now lost the main event, for that fight, especially if it's only like a week or two before the fight. You're out, your ass out on all that money. And I understand the promotions. I see both sides. I see the fighter side. I see the promotion. I see the promoter side. I see the promotion side of not wanting to have an independent company come in and do it that you're not actually paying. That to me it's weird. It's a situation where I don't know. I mean, you can't have it both ways. I would like to see it done where a better way. That's all I would like to see. You can't. It just seems like it doesn't seem like it. There's definitely something that's not right about the situation. You have guys like Nick Diaz and other guys getting 2 and 3 year long suspensions. The guys from the Russian guys, all the Dagestan guys and Russian guys getting 2 year long suspensions for something that they've been taking for since they were kids. I'm not saying that once it's put on the banned substance list, you should know about it, and you should understand that you can't just put anything in your body anymore. You have to know what the details are, and what it is. That's just my opinion. This is obviously Punk's opinion, but that's my 2 cents. Take it for what it is. But I think it's great. You have the best athletes in the world fighting. You have the best athletes in the world going out there and laying on the line. I just don't want to see anyone get hurt and ruin this sport. We don't want to be like boxing. We don't want any of the controversies of steroids. We don't want to be like baseball. We don't want to be where where certain athletes have asterisks next to their names for all the steroid uses they've had. We don't want to be those. We don't want to be those sports. We've shown that we can get there. The athletes themselves can get there. We are fighting at the highest level, and you guys should take pride in that, and I don't feel like that we should lower our level down to that. Like, you want to have a long career, like, stay clean, take care of your body, don't put anything in your body, like, be clean about it, know what you're putting in your body. And I just want everyone to be safe. We're talking, there's a lot of talk right now about CTE. There's a lot of talk about fighters and brain damage and everything else that leads up to it. And after fighting, how they react, football, we see it in football players now. You see all that. And I don't want to see guys come in that are fighting other guys that are on steroids and end up like a TJ Grant, who is at the top, ready to be probably a potential superstar, and could have been somebody that ended up winning the lightweight world title. Could have been. We never heard from the guy again. I haven't heard his name mentioned one time since he pulled out of the Pettis fight. And to me, that's sad. Every person, every athlete, every fighter, okay, is one concussion away from their career ending. And to know that potentially a person is on steroids and a promotion knows about it, or is only handing out slap dick, suspensions based around that, is bullshit. We should be thinking of the safety of the fighters. We should be thinking of the safety of the athlete, and making sure that everyone is taken care of. And because they have families at home, they've got lives at home, and we should be taking that all into consideration. That's my rant on that. That's Punk's opinion. Josh Thomson, you're here with Josh Thomson, Sammy in the Punk Studio. That's my opinion on that. And then, the next thing we'll talk about is the press conference. We will talk about the Khabib and Conor press conference. I will talk about that real quick. This one won't be as long. Everyone, just so we all understand, I'm obviously Khabib's teammate. I train with Khabib. I've sparred with Khabib. I mean, for the last probably like 4 or 5 of his fights, as well as my fights, maybe even more of his fights. Probably the last 6 or 7 of his fights, probably 6 fights. And then I myself have used him for my training as well. So I think today was weird. I think, I had people texting me left and right saying like, man, are you watching this shit? Like, it was just weird. And I don't know if it was because there was no crowd, but it seemed very it seemed like anger. It was just anger instead of entertainment. It was more of an anger. It seemed like Conor he seems like he's taking this a little bit more serious, which I think is good. He should. But there was a sense of like just angry jabs at Khabib and towards his father, which is, I think it should be off limits if you're talking trash. But at the end of the day, it's the fight game, man. You're trying to build it up as much as you can. I feel like he didn't really get any rise out of him until he started talking about people from Dagestan and how they, how they changed their language and all these other things. And that's kind of when Khabib started sticking up for, the people from Dagestan and people from, from his area of Russia and the whole Putin thing, when he said that you're disrespecting your president. That kind of seemed like he got a little bit of a rise out of Khabib, which I guess that's what he's trying to do. He should be, but it was more of the serious anger. You can tell that there's a true dislike. There's a true, I want to beat you, and then, we've heard Conor talk trash before, but today was a little bit more serious trash talk. And I wanted to see, I guess for me, I don't know if it was because of there was no crowd. It was just media, and it was dry. There was no like excitement. I have no idea why they would ever have done this thing without a crowd. I just have no idea. I think maybe they were potentially afraid of the fact that something might pop off. Maybe Russians and Irish people in the same room. I mean, it potentially could have led to something more, which I could understand that. That's the only thing I can think of. But at the end of the day, when they were selling the fight, it just didn't sell. Like it just came across really weird. It was more, it seemed very like hateful and not entertainment wise. Like with the Mayweather and Conor thing, even the stuff that they've had in the past, they had no other fighters there. I mean, there's some great fights on that card. Why didn't they have the other fighters there? We could have mixed it up and heard full conversations amongst everybody. Like we've seen the tier system that they've done where they've had like 2 cards together, or one, like we've had top fights listed all on there, and that was a great idea. Those are great ideas. I mean, you get different opinions, people talking trash to other fighters that they're not even fighting. Like that makes for entertainment. This today was strange, and the trash talk seemed forced. Khabib seems like not interested in the trash talk. I mean, he got a little rise out of him, like I said, about when he started talking about Dagestan people and, no disrespect for your president and that kind of stuff. But overall, and then when they did the face-off, Khabib just left Conor standing on the stage with his 2 belts. I mean, Khabib has, and I've trained with him enough, and I understand him a little bit, enough, I think, to say that he's not taking this lightly, and he's definitely not interested in any of the trash talk. He's not interested in anything to do with all the drama and all the talking and all that stuff that goes along with this. And I think later on down the road, it may affect Khabib's numbers to sell pay-per-views, but Khabib reminds me a little bit, honestly, of Cain Velasquez. Comes in, does his work, at the gym. He talks a little bit more than Cain does, but when it comes press time and interview time, he doesn't talk a whole lot. He does say things, but Cain doesn't say anything. And talent-wise, they're obviously very talented in the way they do things together, but like as far as how they train, it makes for a very interesting matchup, I think, on that night, whereas Khabib is very just composed and is going to go in there, get his hand wrapped, put the gloves on, warm up, do everything he normally does, and go out there and fight his ass off. Conor, I think he's expecting the rise. I think he's expecting to get emotional. And all I saw today, and I'm not trying to be biased at all in the least, I saw more of Conor trying to get a rise out of Khabib, and Khabib not even looking his direction at times. When you could hear Conor in the background making noise like like weird noises, trying to get him to look at him. And Khabib just ignored him, and it seemed like Conor was trying too hard to get the trash talking going, and Khabib's not interested in it. And I don't know if that eventually, like when it comes fight night and fight week and all that stuff, if it's going to get to Conor, because he hasn't been able to get to him like he has all the other guys he's ever fought. He's like he has with, Jose Aldo. You saw it when he was grabbing and snatching his belt. You saw Aldo jump up and want to get his belt back. His ordeal with Dustin Poirier, like the confrontation, it's the stare down. Eddie Alvarez, like not even trying to wrestle, and just was the game plan, for Eddie was apparently to wrestle, and there wasn't even like really an effort to do it, So all that being said, I mean, like this, it seems like he hasn't even scratched the surface of trying to get underneath Khabib's skin. And I wonder how much when they leave to go back home and finish up their camp for the next couple of weeks, how much does that affect Conor McGregor? How much does that make Conor feel like this ain't working? Like, what do I do? And is it going to eat at him and make him think like, man, I'm not under this guy's skin. There's anything I'm doing to him is not even bothering him right now. Like his normal thing is to get people a rise out of people, to get them to react. And it's not even there. It hasn't even, he hasn't even scratched the surface a little bit. Like the only one is, I took pictures with your president. And what, you're disrespecting your president because you didn't get a picture or you didn't want a picture with them or something like that type of stuff. It just seemed very forced. That was the one thing that got a little bit under his skin. But I'm excited for this fight. There is no other fight right now that I think is getting this much attention. I really feel that the Rory McDonald and Gegard Mousasi fight should be getting, not similar attention, but like it's on that level of like this is going to be a great fight. You know what I mean? That fight itself to me I'm really excited to see. Obviously, I'll give you my 2 cents on that. I'm very biased, but that fight itself I think to me is going to be entertaining. It's going to be the excitement coming into the fight. We'll see if it leads up to the hype. But this Conor McGregor and Khabib fight, all the things that they're trying to do to promote this fight. I was listening to Brendan Schaub a little bit saying like how they belittled the fight itself because they keep showing that he threw the cart, the dolly truck or whatever through the bus. I mean, it's good to throw it in there, but they're leading with that as if it's like that's the only thing that this all matters, and I don't feel like it does. I think this is Ireland versus Russia. That's one. This is Khabib sticking up for his dad, sticking up for his people from Dagestan. This is that whole feel of, I mean, realistically, if Conor was American, it would be that whole Rocky Russian kind of like feel to it, and it has that aura. I think about it when people talk about it, like this is going to be pretty dope, man. This is going to be a great fight. I mean, I've given my 2 cents on it. The Conor can come out and knock him out in the first couple of punches. Conor can knock him out in the first round. Conor can knock him out probably in the beginning of the second or the second. I've leaned obviously way towards Khabib. Like once Khabib gets the first takedown, it's going to be a lot harder for Conor to keep getting up after he gets the first takedown. And after that, I mean, like, it's just, I don't think it's going to get easier for him as the fight goes on. He's going to take some steam off of his punches. He's going to take, Conor's not going to have the same pop in his, same bounce in his step, the same pop in his punch, as the fight goes on. Obviously in the first, round and a half, Conor's got a great chance. But it makes for interesting television, man. This is what we tune in. This is all the drug testing and all the other USADA bullshit that's going on with the Jon Jones thing right now. This fight itself, okay, and the Roy McDonald and Gegard Mousasi and the Fedor and Chael and those type of things, right? Those type of fights, the big, huge fights. These are huge fights, man. I mean, we just had the DC and Brock Lesnar fight, the DC and Stipe fight. Those fights, man, that's what this sport is all about. That's what makes this sport great, man. These guys are animals, man. Like you got Matt Mitrione and Ryan Bader. Like these are things like Bader going up in weight. Like, I mean, to me, this is amazing, man. Like these are the fights. These are the things that people want. There was a fight that just got announced that I'm really excited about too. Geez, man, there was another one. I can't remember it right off the top of my head. If I think about it, I'll let you guys. But anyways, there was one that just got announced. There's another one too. Bellator's having in Chickawani versus Melvin Manoff. I love watching Melvin Manoff fight, and that's gonna be a great fight. But I'm saying not on the level of like the other guys, right? Of this, obviously of this Rory and Mousasi and and Fedor and Chael, and then obviously of course Khabib and Conor. That fight's not even near that level. But there was another fight. I want to say it was a UFC fight that was just recently announced that really excited me as well. And I mean, I'm extremely excited. I mean, about Nate Diaz and Dustin Poirier. To me, that's going to be a fucking barn burner. That to me is a huge fight. I can't wait for that damn fight to happen. They've got all these guys that are out there and they're willing for those are the type of fights that make this sport, man. And I'm excited to be part of it. I'm excited to be intertwined in this whole sport from pretty much from the beginning of the sport, and I feel like this is great, man. This is what this sport is all about. This type of stuff. Today's press conference a little weird, and I don't know if it was just weird because of the no crowd, but it was just a little weird. It seemed a little anger. It seemed like it was like anger involved versus actual real stuff. Okay. That's Punk's Pin. Thank you. Out.